At this point in my design process, I, for example, now enter the phase where I start to deal with multiple objects, and I don't necessarily want to adjust for each object the colors. So for example, you see here right now I have a gray for like the lower plastic part, the white, and the red. And let's say I'm just going with the Porsche colors as an example. I also have those buttons. So I do not necessarily want from here copy the colors. So I could, for example, Control or Apple C with my mouse over a color field, go to here, and then Apple V for paste, and change those colors. That's possible. However, if you want to be more fluid in your approach, there is a different option. So, for example, what we can do is simply create a color definition which we can share among different materials. So, for example, this material I call iron body. That's the material for the main body. And inside my node editor, I can create an RGB input. And this, for example, is simply, a color, just a value, not a material, just a color. So here I can click around, adjust it. Also have the color wheel if I click on this bar. And now I press Apple C, Apple V, or Control C and V, and paste this in. And let me duplicate this. For example, this gray material, put to here, and maybe this white material. Whoops. I apply here. Okay. Now what I do is I select all three units because I would like to turn them into a group. So I can press Ctrl G, and then you will see something like this. And then I can, for example, drag those into those empty rings. And you see like there's color output. And if I press N, I get the interface. And for example, here, this one I could call red. This one I could call gray. Or I could call this one white. Jeez, my spelling has issues today. Now with the gray, let's say maybe this should be darker plastic. So you're completely free in the way how you would like to name those. For yourself, it just has to be logical. And then when I press tab, I leave this group edit. So now you see I have kind of like here a node element which I can move around. If I want to edit it again, I can press tab. So I go into the group edit. I can, for example, also rename this one, for example, into color inputs. So it's more logical. And this red, for example, I snap in here, I snap into there, and I snap into there. Okay. Now let's go to here. So I select my other object. And then I press Shift A and group. Here's my color inputs. And then this one, for example, I can snap and snap. And let's say I go to Material Preview. And I drag the gray onto here. So you see that actually I swapped out the color. The nice part about this technique is actually, so when, for example, I change this to a blue, you see all materials are being updated at the same time. So instead of just working on a material per material per material basis, I just do it here once and it updates it for everything. So again, it's a little bit upfront work, but in the long run, you really have a lot of design flexibility. So for example, here I put in my color group, and I would like to use this white color. I'm using red. Okay. And then those buttons, they use that red as well. What's this one? White. Okay. And maybe here, input, and then gray. Okay, great. So even here, if I change the white, you see that it changes that, or it adjusts that color for all parts that share that color input. So you save yourself a lot of work, a lot of clicking, and you are much more flexible in, for example, swapping out colors and then creating variations of your design to see how, for example, your product could look like with a certain color combination.